So I'm going to do something a little bit different today in my sketchbook. I'm wanting to look at the shape and the nature of a mark. So just with a palette knife, I'm bringing in some paint that's sort of thick and also allowing some water to move it around and have sort of transparent parts as well. And now I'm bringing in, with the colour shaper, some sort of rich colour, rich warm colour that will help to sort of bring richness and complexity into the shapes that I'm going to create once I've created a beautiful surface to work with. So this is what I'm doing at the moment, is just sort of building up the surface and creating lovely overlays of colour and allowing the paint just to sort of spread and be what it will be when it's spread across a piece of paper. Alternating between the palette knife and the colour shaper, so I'm getting different sort of marks, and I'm just allowing them to exist. Now have a look and see what happens when you sort of bring a light colour over the top of all that dark paint, dry dark paint. You get these beautiful subtle, this paint just sort of veils over the top of it and creates really subtle contrasts and different values of between light and dark. And the more of that light paint you put on, the sort of lighter you're going to get. And I'm also contrasting more saturated colour with desaturated. So that's now a really gorgeous surface, full of, it has some really deep, dark little bits in it, but it's mostly light. And so into this I can now create some shapes and some marks. I'm coming in with a bit of pencil just to provide some sort of delicate mark making, and I'm just sort of, I just want to have a variety of types of marks on the page. So these will be different from the paint that I'm using. They're sort of wispy and light, and I can sort of highlight areas and deepen areas of colour. So now I'm coming in with a little bit of ink, and I'm going to splashing on a little bit of water as well so that the ink can run free on the page. And using the side of this pointed brush, I want to create a shape with this ink. And so by just spreading it around and using the edge of the colour shaper, I can kind of control it, but still let it be what it's going to be in a sort of an uncontrolled way. So it's a sort of a dance between control and no control. And now with the sponge, I'm just sort of taking off some of the excess water that's on that page there and moving that ink around a little bit more. With some thick paint now and the colour shaper, I'm moving that around to create my shapes. So I'm looking for interesting parts of the page, of the marks, where the ink has sort of mixed with the paint underneath, and I'm sort of finding those bits that are really interesting to me. So I'm sort of, in my head I've got the idea of plants, flowers bobbing around in a garden really, and I want to get the feeling of their movement. I want them to be a suggestion and not be held in space and by a line or an outline. I just want to sort of suggest a form that is lightly moving around in space. So I'm deepening up the colour with a bit of paint, and now I'm coming in with one of my little homemade brushes just to get some really random little marks coming through with this light green on top. This sort of helps with that sort of feeling of movement because they really are quite random. Then I can come in with a pencil and just sort of get these wispy sort of linear very faint lines that when you see up close you can kind of see them, but they're not going to really make that much of a difference. And now with colour, I'm just trying to add complexity to these areas, and depth of colour and layers and richness in those sort of flower head areas. So I'm just bringing in a little bit more of that really saturated colour. You can see the background all around these shapes is very desaturated. It's kind of very light, not much colour, and so I really want to create that contrast between the saturated depth of colour in those flowers and the space around them. So I'm just sort of lightening up the top of that page there, and just bringing in some more lighter, sort of veiled paint. To suggest these plants bobbing around, and this is just sort of the last touches. Just finding those shapes and making sure that they're quite different from each other, and getting a sense of space. So that was fun and quite different from how I normally paint, but really a lot of fun, and I really like the effects. So give that a go.